coming this morning, and really grateful to be here. Really grateful to be here with you, and what we thought we'd do for the next couple of days, we have like 3 sessions. So what I thought is we'll do something a little bit different. Normally we read from Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning. So with your permission, we'll do something slightly different. What I thought is we'd try to go through the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita in 3 sessions. But what we'll do is we'll look at these chapters from a slightly different angle and see how actually what Krishna is doing in the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna is removing every single excuse that we could potentially come up with as to why we can't practice Krishna consciousness, why spiritual life is not for us, why we can't achieve perfection in this life. And if you look very, very closely at what Krishna does in every single chapter, it's actually pretty fascinating. So last night we talked about how in this world there are so many lies, isn't it? There's so many lies, but they appear as truths. In fact, it's interesting. It's said that society is resting on 4 pillars, right? Cleanliness, austerity, mercy, and truthfulness. And therefore we have 4 regulative principles, because each of these principles attack each one of these pillars of society, right? Illicit sex destroys cleanliness. Animal slaughter destroys mercy. Intoxication destroys austerity, and gambling. Oh Lord, I know I'm a sinner, but make me a winner. Right? Destroys truthfulness. However, it said that in Kali Yuga, society is just really standing on one leg, truthfulness. Now that's interesting, because someone may look at society and say, it doesn't look very truthful to me. How many of you believe what the politicians say? How many of you believe what the newspapers say? How many of you believe what I say? Why do you think, in a world in which there's so many lies, why do you think our tradition is saying that society still stands on truthfulness? How? Why? In what way? So many lies. Yeah, so
because people at least appreciate the sentiment, even if they're not following it themselves.
Okay. They appreciate honesty is the best policy. They appreciate truthfulness, but they may not practice it. Good. Any other reason? Yeah.
We hate hypocrisy.
We don't like hypocrisy, even though we are hypocrites. We don't like all the other hypocrites. Yeah? Any other reason? Why do you think we say society is still standing on truthfulness?
It's not as prominent as the other, for example, the other principles.
It's not as prominent as the other principles. Okay. Good. Yeah?
The scriptures is still there, so in that way truth still exists for us to be able to find.
This is the point I was looking for. Thank you. The scripture still exists. In the midst of so many lies, in the midst of an ocean of faults, in the midst of so much confusion and non-clarity in the world, still the one great hope is that the scriptures still exist. And because the scriptures still exist, truth still exists for those that want to find it. Therefore it said in the Bhagavatam, Krishna svadham upagate dharma gnana divisaha Kalo nasta drisham esha puranargo dhunodita. The day when Krishna left this world, Krishna Svadham, when he went back to his own place, Dharma Jnana Divisaha, all religion and all knowledge left with Krishna. And therefore the day that Krishna leaves is the day that Kali Yuga begins. Kalo nasta drisham esha. But in the darkness of Kali Yuga, how are you going to navigate it? Pura narpo dita, because there is scripture. And therefore scripture is still giving everyone an opportunity to access light. Therefore one day Prabhupada was in the room and he said, it's all over. It's all over. It's too late. It's like, okay, what do you mean? Prabhupada said, the books are out there, so it's too late. Because even tomorrow, if all the devotees leave, if tomorrow all the temples close, if tomorrow for some crazy reason the ISKCON movement shuts down, Prabhupada said it's too late, because the books are out there. Someone will read the book, get convinced, and start everything up again. Right? So the books are the hope. The Shastra is the hope. Because the Shastra is removing all the lies. And some of the biggest lies that we have are the lies we tell ourselves about why we can't practice spiritual life. And so what we're going to try and do is go through chapter by chapter and expose some of these excuses. They say excuses only sound good to the person making them. Everyone else, they're like, come on. Can you tell me some of the excuses you think that people may come up with as to why they can't practice spiritual life, why they don't want to practice spiritual life? What are some of the excuses? Yes.
Because it's too hard.
It's too hard.
We don't have time.
I don't have time.
It's not my cup of tea.
It's not my cup of tea. What else?
I'm not ready for it.
I'm not ready for it. What else? Yeah.
Family duties.
I've got too many duties to fulfill.
It doesn't sound right at all. What they say in the scriptures, it doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right. It sounds like mythology. It doesn't sound very scientific.
It's because it's not possible for me, then it's not possible for anybody else. So people are saying they're doing it, they're just pretending.
Yeah, I can't do it, therefore no one can do it.
It doesn't look cool.
Is that again?
It doesn't look cool.
It doesn't look cool. Maybe I'll do it. Yeah, so many excuses, huh? Yeah. So it's interesting when you look at the Gita, Krishna begins to start removing every single one of these. So actually, every single one that you've mentioned is covered, and more. So here we go. And you know, like, I'm going to go chapter by chapter and you feel free to challenge. It's like, no, that's not a good way to answer that excuse. And then we can have a bit of a discussion. Okay, so chapter number 1 removes the very first, most prominent excuse that people have as to why they can't practice spiritual life, which is that I don't have time. Right? Life is busy, there's so many things going on. Once I was giving a talk and one person put his hand up, he said, do you have a job? I said, no. He said, do you have a family? I said, yeah, but I don't live with them. He said, do you have a mortgage? I said, no. He said, are you overburdened by worldly responsibilities? I said, no. I looked at him and said, you want to come and join me? And he said, because you've said no to every single one of these questions, therefore you have time. It's all right for you, you have time. But then I looked at him and I said, did Arjun have a job? Yes. Did Arjun have a family? Yes. Did Arjun have many worldly responsibilities to follow? Yes. Did Arjun make time for spiritual life? Yes. So, if you look, the situation in which the Gita is spoken is not spoken by chance. Because Krishna knows that one of the most popular excuses that people will always come up with is they say, I don't have time. Who could have had more worldly responsibility, worldly pressures? Who could have had more of an intense situation in their life? Who could have been under more pressure than Arjun? Probably at the climax of Arjun's most stressful point in his life, when a war, a fratricidal war is just about to start, what does Krishna say to Arjun? Or what does Arjun say to Krishna? Senayor ubayor madhye ratham stapayame chuta. Arjun says to Krishna at the most intense point in his life, take my chariot to the middle of the battlefield so that I can see everyone who's assembled on the battlefield, so that I can reflect on the situation, so that I can introspect, so that I can question what am I doing and should I be doing this, so that I can understand, am I making the right decisions? Arjun takes time to step back and reflect as to what the purpose of life is. You see, in life there is why, there is how, and there is what. Right? These are the three questions that everyone is confronted with in their life. Why, how, and what. But you know, most people in the world, they're just looking at how and what. But they haven't clarified their why. Why am I doing this? Why am I searching for this? Why is this a goal for me? The first thing that Arjun does in the Bhagavad Gita, in the intensity of the situation, is he steps away and he asks the question, why? Because if you don't start with why, you may do so many hows and whats, but it may not lead you to where you want to be in your life. Therefore, if someone says, I don't have time, that's not a good argument, because some things are so important in life that it's not a question of having time, it's a question of making time. Like we drove from London to Scotland, and if we got on the motorway and we ran out of petrol, and someone said, didn't you fill up petrol before you began your journey? We said, no, we didn't have time. Or say, for example, you're really hungry and someone puts a frozen pizza on your plate. And you say like, but it's frozen. Yeah, but we don't have time to put it in the oven. No. There are some things which are so important, which are so central, which are so crucial, that it doesn't matter how busy life is, you have to make time for those things. Even as devotees, we practice Krishna consciousness, and so easily we can go into autopilot. We can go into mechanical spiritual life. And therefore, even as devotees with so many duties, with so many responsibilities, unless there is that time to step away, you know, like according to Ayurveda, I'm telling you this before breakfast, half of your stomach should be filled with solids, 1/4 should be filled with liquids, and 1/4 should be filled with halava. And 1/4 should be air, isn't it? Because if there's no air, then there's no space for the fire of digestion to take place. Then you eat so much, but what will your body be nourished? It won't be nourished. So who is keeping time in their life? Who is keeping space in their life to really deeply think about things? That person leads a quality life. And so the first thing that Krishna does in the Gita is he expertly arranges it in such a way that no one can ever say, I'm too busy, because no one could ever be more busy than Arjun. And shall I tell you another thing about time? If you don't waste time, then you will find that time magically expands in your life. In life, we waste so much time, but two things happen when you don't waste time. if you look at your life and you can confidently say at the end of the day, today I didn't waste any time. Two things happen. The first thing is that Krishna begins to empower you to do more in the time that you have than you would normally be able to do. Have you ever had that experience? Something that would normally take you 3 hours, you can just get it done in an hour. So the first thing is that if you make the deal with Krishna, that Krishna, I'm not going to waste any time. The first thing Krishna will do is he'll begin to empower you in such a way that you'll be able to do more in the time that you do have. And the second thing that Krishna will do is that magically Krishna will begin to open up more windows of time for you to do more. Someone will just come along and say, oh yeah, don't worry about that, I'll do that for you. Boom, 1 hour opened up. Krishna will make arrangement. But we have to, on our part, make sure we don't waste time. So therefore, the first and most popular excuse that people have, which is, I don't have time for spiritual life, Krishna removes that. Just by the whole setting of the Bhagavad Gita. Yes? I'm going to respond to that. Yeah, we challenge it a bit.
Yeah, because somebody may just be in the wrong mode. They may be okay, they may get like a really good organizer and they start organizing their time, but they may just be in this mode, where even though they're trying like anything, they just can't get it together, and they have to shift first of all into the mode of goodness before they can stop wasting time and start using their time more efficiently.
Yeah, definitely it requires that we shift our first thing, step number one is to make time. That's step number one. And then step number two is then in the time that you do have, you have to actually be in the mode of goodness to actually then utilize that time. Just like, and it takes time to adjust. It's like every year I used to go to India for 1 month in January after the marathon to Vrindavan, just to read and chant. And so it was like throughout the marathon, it was always, you were thinking like, okay, yeah, don't worry, I'm going to get a whole month and it's going to be amazing and nothing to do, no other responsibility. I was going to hear and chant. And then after a whole marathon, you arrive in India and it's like no service, no managerial issues, no other responsibilities. All you have to do is just hear and chant. And so you wake up, and then after about 2 hours of hearing and chanting, you're like, is there anything else to do? Because you realize I'm so passionate, my mind is so disturbed that I'm not even able to apply myself in that way. So yeah, one thing is making time, and then another thing is utilizing that time. But we have to go through that discomfort. Your life is out of balance when suddenly you have some time free and you feel like completely like, I don't know what to do with my life. Right? Because we actually feel unnerved when we have free time because we don't know how to use it. So we have to go through that and then be able to utilize it. But yeah, that's a good point. It's not just about making time, but it's about utilizing time. Yeah. Anything else on this? Being too busy or no, Ramananda, you. Oh, it isn't.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj. Just to challenge one of the points that you made. So you gave the example of Arjuna, how even in the most trying circumstance, being on the battlefield, he was able to make time to hear the Bhagavad Gita. And in that particular situation, if we read the Mahabharata, then we see that Bhishma and Drona, they raised their hand and they told their own soldiers, something's happening, no one fight now until Krishna has finished speaking. So the circumstance at the time and the culture at the time was such that everyone stopped in order to allow Arjuna to hear the Bhagavad Gita. But we may find ourselves in a situation in a contemporary world where we try to make time, we find ourselves in a very, very challenging situation, and we just think, well, okay, it's time just to stop and chat around. And then those people around us, managers, employers, family members, they may say, no, I'm not allowing you time to stop now. So what would be your...
Yeah, it's a great point. We have to create a culture of supporting each other, to know that when we invest time in our spirituality, in our Krishna consciousness, not only do we feel deeply nourished and are able to sustain our spiritual life, but actually even on a practical level, you'll get more done. The classic story is the woodcutter who was on his first job cutting the trees. And he was working so hard. First day he cut 18 trees down. And the next day he thought, I'll impress the boss even more. So he started working harder, but he only did 16. And he thought, what's happening? Then the next day he thought, I've got to get it together. So he started working even harder, and he only did 14. And then a person came by, he saw this woodcutter was bewildered. He said, what's the problem? The woodcutter said, I'm working harder and harder every single day, but I'm cutting down less and less trees. It's a paradox. And the person said, but did you take the time to sharpen your saw? And he said, what do you mean? I got trees to cut. I can't waste any time. And in that moment, he realized that taking time away makes you more effective. You see, an arrow, when you release an arrow, first you have to go back. It sounds counterintuitive. No, you're supposed to hit the target. You're supposed to go forward. No retreats in the Krishna consciousness movement. We're supposed to attack. But sometimes a retreat is like pulling an arrow back. And what it does is it does three things. Number one, it generates power. Number two, it allows you to aim and hit the right place. And the third thing is it gives you the opportunity to time when you release that arrow. So you see, we have a limited amount of energy, and if you want to release that energy in the most powerful, directed and timely way, then first you need to pull the arrow back. And therefore Prabhupada knew he had to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. He was already 63 years old when he moved to Vrindavan in 1959. But still he took 6 years and he stayed in Radha Damodar temple. 6 years. You're like, Swamiji, time is ticking. You got to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. You're already 63. But Prabhupada said, no, I'm going to take 6 years in Radha Damodar. I'm going to get the mercy. I'm going to become empowered. I'm going to be invested with spiritual potency. And then maybe I'll have a chance of being successful. So somehow we need to create that culture around us, and understanding of each other, that giving each other the space to do a bit of that will not only render us more effective, but will render us sustainable for a long time. So yeah, thank you. It's about creating that culture as well, in a balanced way. Yeah, nice. So yes, first excuse, Krishna answers. Let's move on to the second chapter. Another common excuse that people give, well, let's be very honest, especially amongst the Indian community. I am already knowing this. Yes, have you read the 19th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, that's my favorite. Really? I've got the Gita. Here's part 2. Yeah, I have that one as well. Somehow or other, some people tend to think they know everything. Sometimes even we can become a little proud like that. We think I know it all. Now consider Arjun. Who could have known Dharma better than Arjun? Who could have received more spiritual instruction throughout his life than Arjuna? He was surrounded by Bhishma Dev, by Krishna himself, by all these sages who used to visit his home from day one. Who could have been more pious than Arjuna? Who could have known the intricacies of scripture better than Arjuna? But what does Arjuna do in the second chapter? He comes in front of Krishna and what does he say? Karpanya dosho padasvabhava prachami tvam dhamma shamula cheta yakshaya shamischidam bruhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. He says, Krishna, I'm confused. Krishna, I don't know. Krishna, I need your help. Krishna, I need you to give me answers because I don't know the answers. Now that's very interesting that Arjuna, if there was anyone in the world who could have said, I know it all already. If there was anyone who could have said that, it would be Arjuna. But Arjuna didn't say that. Because Arjuna knew, Socrates, he once said that my wisdom is that I know, I don't know. In other words, when one is proud, in colloquial English, when someone is proud, we say they're full of it. Right? Full of it means there's no room for anything else to go in. And so, someone who's actually wise knows that actually I don't know that much. And so if people say I already know it, then actually that's the very proof that they don't know it. Sometimes it's said that there's a circle of knowledge. Right? If you imagine all knowledge in the world to be like a circle, then there's one part of that circle which is things you know. So if you imagine all the knowledge in the world is like a circle, and there's one section which is the things you know. There's another small section which is the things you know you don't know. Right? So say for example, I know I don't know about archaeology. I know I don't know about archaeology. But I do know about computer science because I studied that. So there's a circle of knowledge, and one thing is that one part is what you know, one part is what you know you don't know. But do you know what 98% of that circle is? The things that you
Don't know that you don't know.
The things that you don't know, you don't know. Now that's amazing. That means there's 98% of knowledge in this world are things you don't know, you don't know. The things you don't know, okay, that's one thing. But there is this whole area of knowledge that we're even oblivious to that we don't know. And that, if one has humility, if one has the willingness and the open-heartedness to open a book and explore, if one has if one is enough of a blank slate to go and try to capture what they don't know, then your life begins opening up. Then you begin discovering all these amazing things that you never knew existed in life. But that can only come to someone who's humble. So if someone says, I already know it, no, Krishna removes that excuse, because Arjuna, there couldn't have been someone. Sometimes we ask, out of the 5 Pandavas, why did Krishna decide to speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? What do you think? Why not Bhima? Why not Yudhishthira? Why not Nakul or Sahadev? Why do you think Krishna chose to speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna out of all of the 5 Pandavas?
Because he was humble.
He was humble? Yudhishthira was, Bhima may not have been so humble. Yudhishthira was humble. Okay? Yeah? Any other ideas? Yeah, Dr. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he was in the moment when he was doubting everything.
Okay, yeah, so we know Arjun was the person who began doubting. The others maybe were not doubting like that. That's a good answer, yeah.
Arjuna was topmost example of Grihastha.
Arjun was the topmost example of a Grihastha, okay.
Arjuna had more affection for Krishna than the other characters.
Arjun had more, Krishna had more.
Affection, yeah. Well, Krishna's more affectionate to Arjuna, and Arjuna's more affectionate than the other characters.
Okay, so they had a special bond of affection. Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute.
Because he accepted that he don't know the things.
Because he accepted he didn't know, he came to that point, yeah.
Because he was the most able man of the time.
Yes.
Strongest.
This is probably what I would say. I think all of your answers were right. But perhaps one of the reasons Krishna spoke to Arjun is because there couldn't have been a more successful person in the world than Arjun. There couldn't have been someone higher than him who had reached the heights of his caliber in his field. Someone who had everything. But Krishna wanted to show that even if you have everything, still maybe it won't make you happy. Still maybe it won't fulfill you. Still you come to a moment where you question everything. Just on Adoksaja's Prabhu's point about Krishna having special affection for Arjun, there is, Jiva Goswami does give one reason why Krishna had a special affection for Arjun. Because where was Krishna's heart always? Even Krishna may have been in so many places, but where was Krishna's heart always? Or where is Krishna's heart always?
Vrindavan.
In Vrindavan, okay? Krishna's heart is always in Vrindavan. So what does that have to do with his affection for Arjun? Because in Vrindavan, Krishna has many, many sakhas, many friends. And one of Krishna's friends in Vrindavan, his name is Arjun Sakha. So Krishna had special affection for Arjun, Jiva Goswami says, because whenever he said Arjun's name, he remembered Arjun Sakha, and therefore he remembered Vrindavan. And so he especially liked Arjun because Arjun reminded him of Vrindavan. That's what Jiva Goswami says. But yes, we can say Arjun had everything, but still he was humble enough. So this is not a good excuse. So if anyone says, I am knowing, I already know it, no. Because Arjun didn't know. So that's not a good excuse. Yeah. Anything anyone want to say on this? Okay. Oh yeah, okay.
How to convince?
How to convince people that are even
Great
ourselves that we don't
difficulty.
know.
For example, if you meet them on Sankirtan, and what do you say, Adoksaja Prabhu?
When they say they're too busy.
Well, no, when they say they already know it.
Oh, when they say they already know it. I say I already know it. It's been that long. Well, actually, one thing about Shri Krishna is that I know. He says, "I know that you know it, and that's what I know. So I also knew it. But this is what I found."
Okay. Yeah, you can say, or sometimes it's just. Sometimes you have to tell them, "I know you know it, but now I need your help to help us tell everyone else." So can you join our team? Like, we know you know it, but we need to make everyone else aware of it as well. So it's great to have another person who knows it. And, maybe you can help us out by sponsoring a book if you don't want to take the book, because obviously you already know it. And so sometimes you may not be able to immediately correct someone's mentality, especially if there's some ego or some pride there. Therefore, what you may instead try to do is engage them in some way, try to connect them in some other way that circumvents their ego, and still allow them to be part of the Sankirtan movement, and then gradually they'll realize, that, yeah, maybe I don't know. So yeah, it requires some piety to be humble as well. Yeah. So engage them somehow. Yeah. Sometimes you can't humble people by defeating them. You have to humble people by flattering them. like that story of the man who had his coat on, and the wind said, "Okay, I'm going to get him to take his coat off," and the wind just began blowing and gushing and rushing, and as the wind blew and blew and blew, the man just got hold of his coat and just tightened up even more. And then the sun came, and then the sun said to the wind, "Move aside." And the sun came, and it just glowed. And as the sun rays came down, then the man kind of got a little oh God, it's getting a little hot here. And then he just took off his coat naturally. So sometimes we try to remove people's defenses by arguments, but sometimes it's more wise to try and do it by sweetness, flattery. That could also be. Chapter number 3. I have so many duties to fulfill. I have so many competing responsibilities. I have so many different things I have to focus on. I have so many different concerns in my mind that it's very, very difficult to focus. This is exactly the argument that Arjuna gives to Krishna at the beginning of the 3rd chapter. Because Arjuna basically by the end of the 2nd chapter says to Krishna, I'm convinced that I should be spiritual. I'm convinced that I should deepen my relationship with God, with Bhagavan. But how do you expect me to do it on the battlefield? I have so many dharmas. Maybe I need to give up all of these dharmas and just focus on one dharma, the Sanatan dharma, the eternal dharma. Yes, Arjuna has so many dharmas. He has a Kula dharma, a family, a duty to his family. Arjuna has a Kshatriya dharma. He has a dharma as a warrior. Arjuna has a Pati dharma. He has a dharma as a husband. And in the midst of all of those dharmas, Krishna is saying you also have a spiritual dharma. But what does Krishna tell Arjuna to do? Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhya cha. Don't remove yourself from the battlefield. Rather, mam anusmara, while remembering me, yudhya cha, at the same time fight. Fight and remember me. In other words, what Krishna says to Arjuna is that when you become smart in your life, then what you realize is that different dharmas are not competing for your attention. Rather, different dharmas can be seamlessly integrated to create more of a focus on your spirituality. So in Krishna consciousness, sometimes we think that these dharmas are in conflict with each other. But when we become more wise, then we realize that all the different dharmas we have, if we approach them in the right way, then they can all actually help to increase our Krishna consciousness. Arjuna is being told by Krishna, don't just be a king. Arjuna's like, do you want me to be a king or do you want me to be a spiritualist? Krishna's like, I want you to be a spiritual king. Arjuna's like, do you want me to be a husband or do you want me to be a spiritualist? Krishna's like, be a spiritual husband. Do you want me to be a father or do you want me to be a spiritualist? Can you be a spiritual father? In other words, too many times in our life we compartmentalize our Krishna consciousness and we think, my Krishna consciousness takes place here and these are all the other things that I have to do in my life to survive, but really I'm just waiting for this time when I can do my Krishna consciousness. But actually, what Krishna is showing is that every single thing that we do in our life can contribute to our Krishna consciousness. Every single dharma is meant for that. Dharma svanustita pumsham vishvakshena kathashuya. All the dharma that you do in life should ultimately lead to a greater attraction for Krishna. And so the ingenuity of spiritual life is to somehow figure out how all the different things that we have to do in life can actually contribute to our Krishna consciousness. And when we learn that, then it's not that things are competing for attention, but it's rather that all these things can create a focus attention, like that. Okay. It's 8:30, so I don't know how we want to do this, because I guess we have a schedule. So how do you want to do it, Abhyamka?
We can continue for some time, then we'll take a break.
That's very open-ended. Shall we do 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes. Anyone have any questions on this? Any practical questions? Yeah.
So if a person is a karma yogi, he is doing all his duties with perfection, near to perfection, he is truthful, he is honest to his work, he is also not harming anyone else, but still he doesn't chant the name of the Lord. Can that person still be a spiritual person?
Okay, so if someone's doing all their duties, they're not harming anyone else, can they be a karma yogi? Can they be a spiritualist? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what does the word yoga mean?
It means union.
Union with who?
Union with the soul. Union of mind, body and soul.
Only union of mind, body, soul?
Into the infinite energy. Union of mind, body and soul into the eternal energy.
Yes, union of the soul and God. Union of the infinitesimal soul with the supreme soul.
Yes.
So there's this kind of concept within, especially prominent in Hindu culture, that if you do your duty, if you take care of your family, if you pay all of your bills, and you fulfill all your worldly obligations, then you are karma yogi. Actually, that's not what makes you a karma yogi. What makes you a karma yogi is when you're actually using your work to connect with God. Otherwise, you're a karmi. To be a karma yogi, you have to be doing something to connect with God. So what do you do to connect with God? Therefore Krishna says, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. From your karma, you get a phala. What does a phala mean? A fruit, a result. You get some benefit. Now, ma karma phalahetur bhur. If you use that phala to try to dedicate it to God, to connect it to God, to offer it to God, then you begin your life as a yogi. Yoga only begins when there's some activity of connection. Yeah. So sometimes there's this concept, my work is my worship. But your work is only worship if you're dedicating the work consciously to God. It's not just that by clocking in and out every day at 9 to 5 that you're all of a sudden a karma yogi. Yeah. Otherwise, the most dutiful workers in the world would be the greatest spiritualists, but they're not. You can just work really hard. One of my uncles, for 60 years, he ran a corner shop. And he was in 5 a.m. every morning, and he wouldn't come home till 10 p.m. every single day, 7 days a week. He never had one holiday in 60 years. Doesn't make him spiritual. Still a nice person. That in itself doesn't make you spiritual. What are you going to do? You have to offer it. Yeah. So that's life is about consciously offering to Krishna. So it's about understanding how all of your dharmas can be offered to Krishna. As a husband, can you make that spiritual? Of course you can. As a father, what does it mean to be a spiritual father? Just to give your children good education so that they can get a really good job?
It means help them to become a good human being.
Is it? Is that the only thing? What defines a good human being?
A person who does his duties and also is consciously aware of God.
Yeah, you saved yourself.
This is actually a question asked to myself, and I have seen a lot of people who are atheists, they don't believe in God. However, they do a lot of work with perfection, not only just their professional work, they maintain personal life, professional life, a good balance of everything. But still, they don't believe in God.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people in this zone. So I just wanted to know if they can be considered as spiritual as well.
Yeah, no, they're considered as dutiful, they're considered as maybe pious, but not necessarily, not spiritual. To be spiritual, you have to do something to connect. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, we're going to 4. Another common excuse that people come up with as to why they can't practice spiritual life is they say, I'm not intelligent enough. I read these books, they're too difficult to understand, they go in one ear, out the other ear. The Bhagavatam is a good cure for insomnia. When I read it, I go to sleep. One devotee said, devotees in the temple get 7 hours of sleep every day, 6 hours at night and 1 hour in the Bhagavatam. So for some people it's too much, like they just feel like the knowledge is beyond them. It's sometimes you're reading a chapter and it's just like a countdown till the end, just to somehow get through it. Am I intelligent enough? Can I really grasp all of this knowledge? Maybe it's for the scholars, maybe it's for the... But what does Krishna say in the 4th chapter? The 4th chapter is all about transcendental knowledge. So what Krishna does in the 4th chapter is he explains how does that knowledge come down, in what way one should receive it. But what Krishna also does in the 4th chapter is he tells us what is the qualification to receive transcendental knowledge. So what is the qualification to receive transcendental knowledge? Krishna says, Sa evaya maya dedya yoga prokta purana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam yadadutamam. Krishna says this knowledge is rahasya, is very confidential, it's not easy to grasp. But what is the qualification for someone who wants to grasp it? BSc, PhD, MAD. Krishna says, Bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam yatadutamam. This knowledge can be revealed to you because you are a devotee and because you are friendly to Krishna. In other words, Krishna doesn't give any intellectual measure of where someone should be at in order to grasp this knowledge. Krishna says you just have to be a devotee. You just really have to have a heart to want to understand Krishna. Krishna says you have to be friendly, you have to be free of envy. And with this good character, one can actually understand the knowledge. So this knowledge is not an intellectual thing. It's not about racking up more and more verses. It's not about racking up more and more information. In the material world, they think knowledge is like linear, like a line, like you begin here and you learn more and more and more. In spiritual life, learning is like a spiral. Actually, you just discuss the same things. You read the same books, discuss the same pastimes, again and again, just discussing the same things again and again. But what happens is you get closer and closer to the essence of what that knowledge is. So it's not about increasing your capacity to process information, but rather it's about drawing the essence of that knowledge by internalizing it within the heart. And therefore no one can say, I'm not intelligent enough. If you look at those who come to Krishna consciousness, if you look at those who have awakened the highest states of spiritual realization, there's no correlation to their IQ. There's no correlation to how intelligent or academically gifted they were. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to South India and he saw a Brahmana who was illiterate, who had the Bhagavad Gita, but everyone was laughing at him. And Mahaprabhu said, why are they laughing at you? He said, because my spiritual master told me that I should read the Bhagavad Gita every single day, but I'm illiterate, I can't read, but still I have to try, so I'm holding the book. Therefore they're all laughing at me. And Mahaprabhu looked at him and he saw that there were tears in his eyes. He said, but you're saying you can't read it, you're saying you can't grasp it, but when I see your face, it seems you have so much emotion, so much love. He said, yeah, I can't read the book, but when I think about how Krishna, who's the Supreme Lord, has become the chariot driver of his devotee, how Krishna has taken such a humble position, how Krishna loves his devotee so much that he's willing to put himself at the front of the chariot and take all of that just to serve his devotee, then I think Krishna is so amazing, and tears come to my eyes. And Mahaprabhu said, you have actually understood the Bhagavad Gita, you've understood the heart of the matter. And so no one has to feel that Krishna consciousness is intellectually or academically beyond them, because that's not the qualification. The qualification is just that one has to be devoted. And if one has that, then Krishna says, Desham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenayam upayatite. Krishna says, Dadami, I will give buddhi, I will give whatever intelligence you need. Deshamivānukam partham, I'm dwelling within their hearts and I destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna will help, and we simply have to be devoted. So can you see chapter by chapter how Krishna is gradually removing all conceivable excuses that anyone could come up with. And so like this, on the coming sessions, we'll look at the other chapters and see what other arguments Krishna uses to annihilate our excuses. Main thing is we need to have a desire. One person, he went and he decided, I'm going to go and I'm going to climb to the peak of the Himalayas. So he came to the foothills of the Himalayas, and just as he was about to begin his ascent, he checked into the hotel room for the night and he said, I'll begin tomorrow morning. So he checked into his hotel room, and then in the morning he came down to the reception, and there was a blizzard, there were winds, there was treacherous conditions outside. But he came to the reception desk, he handed in his keys, and he proceeded to walk to the door to begin his ascent up the Himalayas to the peak. And the person at the reception said, where are you going? There's a weather warning, there's snow, there's winds, there's all these treacherous conditions. Are you really going to trek to the top of the Himalayas in these conditions? And you know what he said? He said, because my mind and heart has already reached the peak, for my body to get there is just a formality. And with those words, he just walked out and he navigated everything and he got to the peak. And I really like that story, because the question is not what the external obstacles to our Krishna consciousness are. The question we have to ask ourselves is, has my mind reached the goal? Has my heart reached the goal? Have I embraced the aspiration to achieve this within myself? Because if you've done that, then all the other external difficulties that may be there, nothing will be able to stop you, because your heart has already reached. And so yes, we're not saying that the material world is not full of obstacles and challenges and difficulties, but the real question is, internally, have we grasped what we want to achieve? If that's there, everything else will work out by Krishna's grace.
Maharaj,
Yes, okay. We'll take any last few questions and then we'll stop.
for many people, mind and heart, they don't go together.
For many people, the mind and the heart don't go together. So, how do we deal with that? Yeah, that's why Krishna says you have to elevate yourself. Udaret atmanam. You have to elevate yourself with the help of your mind, and not degrade yourself. Right now, the mind is acting as an enemy. It's acting against our heart, our aspirations. It's not supporting us on our journey. It's not facilitating us to achieve what we want to achieve. Therefore, we have to learn to control the mind. If you want the heart and the mind to become one, then you have to purify the heart and you have to control the mind. And you have to bring them together. And how do you control the mind? Arjun asked Krishna the same question. Arjun says, Vayuriva sudushkaram. To control the mind, Krishna, is more difficult than to control the wind. So what does Krishna say? Asamsayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu konteya vairagyena chagriyate. Krishna says, Asamsayam, without doubt, Arjun, you have to control the mind. How is it possible? Abhyas, by practice. Vairagya, by detachment. These are the two keys if you want to control the mind. By detachment, first you have to quieten the mind. And then by practice, you have to mold the mind. It's like how you tame a tiger. First you have to quieten the tiger, and then you mold it. Yeah, so it's a matter of, if you want the heart and mind to become one, then you have to purify the heart and you have to control the mind. You purify the heart by hearing and chanting and rendering devotional service, and you control the mind by abhyas and vairagya. And then the mind and heart become one. Easier said than done.
No, but the current culture is, I don't have to control the mind, but I have to depend on other people to help me to go through the phase of the life. The whole mental health propaganda is, seek help, There's less focus on you do yourself to control the mind.
Yeah. Of course, we do seek help, even in Krishna consciousness, to control the mind. We seek the association of devotees, we seek the advice of others, we look at the insights of Shastra, we try to draw mercy from different places. But ultimately, the endeavor comes from us. Yes, that's for sure. We have to want to control our mind.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think maybe we'll stop there because it's already 8:45, and we'll continue on, I guess, tomorrow. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Svayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj ki Jai.